16 teams left. One thing stays the same. Uconn Dominance.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets. If your first bet of $5 or more wins, visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Well, today we're joined by a special guest, the man who taught me all about sports, and in particular, who brought me into this UConn world, my dad, Bill Zanetto. Dad, welcome to the show. We're here in the Sweet 16. How are you feeling about another dominant 2 games from UConn?
Yeah, I think I worry more than most people. As great as they've looked and as dominant as they've been, I always worry that, some team's going to get hot and make a lot of threes. But if they keep playing the way they are, unless some team gets really crazy hot, I don't see anybody that can beat them right now.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting point because I think anything can happen in March, but I also feel like with this bracket, the way it's set up, we'll get to some of the teams later in the show, but the team that's in front of them right now, the San Diego State team, could it happen where they get hot and make a bunch of threes? I think maybe, but this team in particular doesn't kind of set up that way. If they played maybe a Florida Atlantic team, like when they played against Northwestern is another team that we played that really just doesn't fit that profile. Right. I don't see a team in this East region that fits that profile, like a Creighton, that can get hot and shoot 50% from three at like a high volume. Anyone can hit 6 threes in a game and go like 6 for 12, but I just don't. I don't see that as much. But I'm with you there. Do you look at that game against Northwestern where they shot? I mean, this is crazy. I talked to you about this yesterday. 81.2% from 2-point range. What have you ever seen a performance as dominant as that from? I mean, you played at a time where there was no 3-pointer. Like 81 point. If there were no 3-pointers, they shot 81% for the game.
Yeah, that was a pretty amazing thing. I think that you can contribute that to what a great passing team they are. They're always looking for the open man, and if they take away the 3, they're cutting and they're getting layups, which contributes to that. And it doesn't hurt to have 7'2" Cline and get him the ball moving toward the basket. He's just not going to miss. So it is an amazing stat considering what they shot for threes. You told somebody said, look what their percentage is for 3. You'd say, oh my God, that game might be a problem. But it's amazing to me that they can have a game where they don't shoot threes that well when they have some great 3-point shooters. All 3 guys, Caravan, Tristan Newton, and Cam Spencer are all great shooters. But they still had an incredible defensive game, and they were so way ahead, which still kind of amazes me, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, I think what's also amazing too is I know UConn fans like to, when we're in the heat of the moment, Northwestern's not that good. It still was a quality opponent. They won 13 games in the Big Ten. They beat Purdue. They beat Illinois, who's on the other side of the bracket. They beat a Wisconsin team who was ranked as high as 6th in the country. Yeah. They also got throttled by Illinois by 30 in the year. So you can kind of see what the difference game by game goes. But UConn was so overwhelming to them physically. And I also thought mentally, the way they run their sets, the back, I feel like when you get a lot of backdoor cuts, that kind of drops you down mentally from a defensive perspective on Northwestern side. I mean, I think, Mikey Casey, like he messaged me and said, we're starting to run out of words to kind of talk about them. Like there's nothing more to say other than we just go and watch these games and we're in awe. Do you feel that the same way?
Yeah, I do feel a little bit in awe of what's going on, but I told you earlier, I get a little scared just because that's my demeanor. But I think a lot of things that people don't mention about UConn, and now I'm going back to my old days.
Please.
Some of the greatest teams, UConn mirrors them in a lot of ways. Back in my day, the 2 biggest The two greatest teams were the Boston Celtics in the pro game and UCLA in the college game. And what they did is what UConn does a lot, and I see it more and more every day, is that Cline gets the rebound and gets a quick outlet. You do that, and it's really hard to score these days sometimes because the defenses get set and you're in the half-court offense. And sometimes it's easy, but sometimes it's not that easy. You struggle. You see the shot clock go down. The more you fast break and get that rebound, which Cline has been doing great and getting it out fast, it just creates – I don't know. I don't hear more coaches talk about this, but it creates easy shots for your team. I don't care who their team is. You get a rebound and get it out, and you get down fast. The defense is scrambling. There's going to be open shots and open layups. So I just think that UConn's doing a great job of getting that ball out quicker, and they seem to be doing it more and more, which to me is great.
Yeah, that's a great point too. I made a comment yesterday to a friend that my favorite play of the game against Northwestern was Cline got a rebound off a missed three. He had a quick outlet pass to about not half court, but about the hash mark on the other side, and then Newton pitched it ahead to Diarra. No dribbles.
Right, no
boom,
dribbles.
boom, boom. Diarra went up, took one step, went to the basket, got an and one and a layup, and made the 3-point play. And it was right towards the end of the half. It was like it came off the backup of a Cam Spencer 3 too. Right. So you got a Cam Spencer 3, they miss a 3, you go boom, boom. 3 seconds later, that's a 6-0 run. Now again, that game was 30-14. Then Cam hits it's 33-14. Then it's 36-14. So you've almost not doubled your score, but another 6 quick points in a matter of not even a minute. 40 seconds. So right. Those are the spurts that I'm seeing from UConn.
Yep.
And to your point, that drill reminded me of, and I'm sure you did this when you played in high school, where your coaches, and I'm sure they do this in college too, where they do those outlet passes where you're kind of doing that kind of shell drill where you're doing fast break, where they kick it out and everyone's kind of that weave. And at the time, like when you're a kid and you're watching and you're playing, you don't really know when this is going to come about in a game. That was the epitome of that drill in live form going forward.
Yeah, it's nice to see. And for most of your younger viewers, I don't know how many people you have watching that are 71 years old like me. But for some of your younger guys, when you get a chance, go to YouTube or something, check out stuff like UCLA in 1969 to 1970, when they had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and then they had Bill Walton and the old Boston Celtics. There's plenty of tape and plenty of things. You'll be amazed how quick that ball was coming down the court after a rebound. And UConn's starting to do that more and more, and it just makes sense. With the shooters that everybody has now, if they're open and they're not really being harassed, they're certainly going to shoot a higher percentage.
No, I agree. You mentioned before that you get a little nervous. You get, well, not necessarily nervous, but you get a little scared about potentially a team having a tough game. Has anything changed with you over the years? Were you more like demonstrative, like when you were younger, or like are you more chill now? Like what's the story? Because I don't sit with you and watch the games like I used to.
I think with this team that we're watching, because they play such great defense, I don't feel quite as nervous. Because look at last game. I mean, they didn't hit. The percentages better than me, but there weren't too many outside shots.
Yeah, and 13% from three.
And they were still way up at halftime, which is kind of like, how'd that happen? Right. How were they so far ahead? And they couldn't make a shot. I mean, it was layups and it was clinging, and not to keep harping on Cline, like you've mentioned in the past. Last year when I was watching Cline, and he didn't play as much because he had Sonogo in there. Mm-hmm. I used to yell at the TV saying, keep him in longer. He didn't always dominate like he's starting to do right now. But I saw that spurts were like, oh, my God, they're as good as they had in center, and he was the backup. They were better with him in there. I saw a lot of that, not all the time. And I said, oh, my God, this guy can be an amazing player as he gets older and more. And it's really come to fruition now. I think that, I don't see anybody that can dominate a game like he can right now.
No, you're spot on there. We're going to get into that in a few more things right after this. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a one seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED lights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your #1 ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP. Bring home that with the win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guarantee Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, Dad. So we got one weekend down, 16 teams left. UConn is dominating, but now the competition ramps up. Do you remember when we talked last season and I said, this team is special? I don't know if I texted you or called you, but I think they started 14-1, and I was and really kind of talked about that. Do you remember that moment?
I do.
This has everything to do with what you just talked about how when Donovan Cline was starting to click a little bit, and they had a really, I felt like they had a really special team. Since the tourney last year, they've gone 39-3. Can we look at that and say this is the best stretch in UConn basketball, men's basketball history?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, they had last year, they were playing well. Then they had made everybody nervous, a bad spell. I don't remember exactly what it was. It was like they lost 6 out of 7 games. I said
6 out of 8. Yep.
I said, what happened to this team? But then after that, it was like dominance. And no, there's never been a team in the past. There have been a lot of good teams, but there's never been a team in the past that dominated as they are right now. I guess that's what makes me nervous.
You're waiting for the other shoe to drop?
Well, I if they play up to their capabilities, I don't see anybody beating them.
So, what do you remember about? And if there's not much, it was one capsule of a game last year, and also this team is a little different. What do you remember about San Diego State from last year?
It's hard for me to remember a year ago about San Diego State, but UConn just dominated them. That's all I remember. I mean, they didn't have a chance, to be honest with you. Now refer back. Now I don't know much about them this year. You told me, I think, once that the team has changed some. There's new players, as well as UConn has new players. I watched a little bit of their last game, and who scared me a little bit is that 6'9" center forward Adi.
Yeah,
I think he's a really good. From what I saw, he had a really good game last game, and I think that one way of having a chance against UConn, this team scares me a little bit because Adi can bring Cline out.
Yep.
I think if I'm wrong, tell me. It looked like to me he could shoot a 3-pointer pretty well. Now,
yeah, and I think just to clarify, I think it's Lede, but
Lede,
just I think it's Jaden. I think it's Jaden Lede or Lede or something like that. But that's who you're talking about. Yeah, he played. I watched a little bit of the Yale game.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have to remember too, as good of a team as good of a tourney and season as Yale had, they're stepping up in class a little bit. Now you're playing, San Diego State's obviously playing the best team in the country now. I think you're right. I think that Lee can Lede can actually shoot a little bit from 3. He had an abnormally good 3-point shooting day, but that's also because Wolf, their 7-footer, didn't really go out and guard him. Like they were like daring him to shoot. I'm not sure what his percentage is. Yeah. We're doing a San Diego State breakdown with a gentleman named Rocco Miller for tomorrow's show. So we'll kind of dive into the statistics of what they shoot. San Diego State only shoots about 7 or 8 threes, like attempts a game. They're really not a huge 3-point shooting team. So to me, if you're going to go blow for blow with UConn on the 2-point game, that's where I think they have, and I hate to say this because anything's possible, but they really don't have a chance. Like they have a chance, but in terms of, if you look at the efficiency of UConn from the 2-point range, they're not going to shoot 81% from two again.
Right.
But even if they shoot 60% from two and shoot mediocre from three, the formula, kind of just from an analytic perspective, like the amount of points that you can score, I just don't see San Diego State having a chance there.
Nope.
But you're right. They have this kid, Jaden Ledee. They have Trammell, who's their point guard, who was on their championship team last year, a runner-up team. I'm curious to see how San Diego State guards UConn.
Right.
Do you think I mean, I know you haven't watched a ton of SDSU, but what are the pitfalls of doubling Cline? Like if you're the opposing coach and you have to guard this UConn team, like would you double Cline? Like what would your strategy be?
I think most of the coaches will not double Cline, because if you look at the whole game, as dominant as he was, think about how many low posts, setting up in the low post and getting the pass and scoring isn't all of his scoring. He gets a lot off of pick and rolls, where he's moving and they're driving and he opens up. So I think they'll take that over all the UConn 3-point shooters being wide open and making them pay with threes. Like you told me how important the 3-point shot is now these days.
Yeah,
it certainly is. And I think that most of the teams will not double team him. Maybe occasion, may give him a different look. But I just wanted to say one thing about San Diego State. With that, is it Ledee or Ledee? I keep getting it wrong.
Ledee. Yep.
Ledee. I don't know that much about him. He looked good that game. I think that's the type of offense that could give UConn a little trouble, because they bring him out, and even if he's not shooting, Cline has to edge out a little bit, and he can't be as dominant if he's way out near the foul line when they drive. Maybe he's quick enough to recover, and help. But he was so dominant in blocking shots. I mean, that is so incredible what he does for that team. If you have a center that's not much of a scorer and he can kind of not pay attention to him, he's free to roam and do whatever he wants. And last game, he was dominant with how many 8 or 9 block shots, whatever. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And you drive in. How many times does he save points for UConn because they drive in and they open up, they see an opening, then all of a sudden he appears and they keep dribbling and they come back around.
Yep.
So not only is he blocking those shots, he's intimidating them. And I'm just wondering if their strategy might be keep their center way out, and maybe he hits some threes, maybe he doesn't. Who knows? But it does make Cline edge out a little bit more, which may open up some lanes. That's just something I would do if I was the coach, is to try to get Cline away from the basket a little bit more.
No, I think you're right. I think that's what Greg McDermott did at Creighton. I know Ryan Kalkbrenner is not necessarily a willing 3-point shooter. He can make threes.
Yeah,
in the Creighton game where they lost, even though Donovan got in foul trouble, they did bring also Sampson and DC out a little bit, and it kind of opens up lanes for them. Because I mean, let's face it, like UConn doesn't run a traditional post offense anyway. So the idea of, well, you just double Cline, or it's not like it's Armando Bacot from North Carolina where they dump it down to the post and then everyone kind of is around him and they kind of react to what the defense does. Donovan gets a lot of his, as you mentioned, a lot of his points off of pick and roll, and they bring him out as a willing passer, screener,
right,
to kind of get into their action and get those backdoor cuts to Caravan, get those fade outs for threes for Cam and for Alex Caravan. They could also, what's interesting too, I think, about UConn that other teams they can't do this, is in addition to bringing in Sampson just to kind of mix things up from an athletic perspective, is to kind of, while people are getting rest, is to play Alex Caravan at the 5. And that could also be something they do with this San Diego State team, because if you're going to match up, if you're going to match up with them and try to disrupt what UConn does, they can play any way you want, really, right? But I also think they'll likely do what they did against Northwestern, which is try to physically impose them, which is difficult. San Diego State is built off of defense. That's their identity is toughness. Their identity is we're gonna get it in the muck. And if you go back to the championship game last year, I know it was a long time ago, They cut it to 6, and then Hawkins hits a 3, and then it went nuts from there. They got it up to about 20, and they won by 17 points. So yeah, I mean they didn't have a chance. It was pretty dominant from start to finish. They made one run, but shooters make great shots, and I think that's what Hawkins did in that game to kind of put it out of reach. The one question I have:
who did San Diego?
Who did they lose?
Yeah.
They lost a player that's now at Arizona. I think his name is, funnily enough, Keyshawn Johnson.
Okay.
He's a big piece of Arizona's team in the transfer.
Mm-hmm.
He's a 6'9", 6'10", really great athlete. Pardon me. I'm not super familiar with everybody they lost, but I just know the two that stand out are Trammell, because he's their guard that made a lot of shots. He could get hot. He's not a traditional 3-point shooter, but he's capable. Mm-hmm. And then Leday, I think those are their two. I mean, they have a good team. They are, I don't think they won the Mountain West, but they're the only ones left in the Mountain West Conference. So they're holding the flag for the 6 teams that got in. So we'll see what happens. And I think going forward, really what we're going to find is UConn will likely win this game. If you had to pick a final score of this game, what do you look at from UConn versus San Diego State?
Well, I would say they'll win by 15 points to 17 points in that area, but I'll take any win.
Right? No, it's true. So before we get into our last segment, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have you turned on the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and more. Streaming 24/7 on YouTube and on the free Fire Amazon TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. This week's March Madness Bracket Highlight is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week, we're picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest. Just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs, these guys were able to take it to the next level. The Iowa State Cyclones can only be described as a pathfinder. They've been thrilling to watch and have really created a lane for themselves, entering the tournament as one of the hottest teams in the country. They have a date with Illinois this Thursday in the Sweet 16. All right. Let's get into our last segment here, Bill. Mm-hmm. This segment is called Bill's Best. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. Mm-hmm. I just want your opinion on them, and we will go from there.
Okay.
Which player on this team would you least want to lose, either to injury, or they foul trouble? They're not impactful in a game when they usually are. So you have to drop one of the starters, essentially.
Can I drop one starter, then tell you who the next one is?
Sure.
Well, to me, it's Cline.
Okay.
He's the most dominant player on the team. After Cline, it's got to be Tristan Newton. I mean, that guy, look at, I mean, last game, he didn't hit a 3. He missed every shot he took from the outside, made some incredible drives, and he plays great defense. He's probably the best rebounding guard in the country. Mm-hmm. And he's he throws great passes. So after Cline, he's a close second.
Okay. I think those are the two most popular picks. I think for me, Cline is if you go by the metrics, you're right there, because it's him and Zach Edey as the two most impactful players in the country, right. According to a couple different websites. For me, it's Alex Karaban, because to me, what we don't see come through on the screen is his ability to get people in places where they need to be. Right. He's, they've called him the brain center, like we're in a game where he doesn't have a 20-point game or 10 rebounds. Like against Northwestern, he had 9 points and 5 rebounds.
Right.
His fingerprints are on every win they have. So that's my if from Cline, I'd go to Karaban. I know it's not a sexy pick, and also I agree with you on Tristan. The thing that's so crazy, and we can talk about this, is it doesn't matter who you pick, because they're all so impactful, right?
That's true.
Cam Spencer is another one. Like when Tristan Newton's having a tough day and he kind of takes over the playmaking ability, passing. Then you have a freshman like Steph Castle, who they asked him against Northwestern to say, hey, take care of Boo Buie. He's their best player. Just dominate him on defense. Don't worry about offense. He hit 7 points. He took like 2 shots. His focus, his mission was defense for that game. So, I think no matter who you go with, there's no wrong answer.
Right. Karaban, I love Karaban. I think he's great. Love watching him play. And to be honest with you, I remember talking to you earlier in the year about Castle. I was a little worried about Castle because I know he was coming off an injury, and I seen what he was doing. Not so much defensively, because some people, even myself, probably forget to look at the defensive skills just on offense. And I was a little disappointed, to be honest, at the beginning of the year. But man, he's come on great, and he's a great contributor to the team. Defensive lockdown, making some shots, making his foul shots. So everything's turned up roses right now with him.
Yeah, I think for me, the Steph stuff, and I think I agreed with you earlier in the year, but I also remember in my brain saying, like, have some patience, because not forget about the injury stuff. But Dan Hurley has talked about with this guy is he's a 5-star recruit. So when you say that, you're a McDonald's All-American, everyone thinks you come in and you're Ray Allen, right? You have to kind of be that, like, the all-time, the scorer, like you have to. He's not being asked to do any of that stuff. I think one of the things that Dan Hurley has said, and I've had people in my YouTube comments say, well, he should stay an extra year because he's not ready to go. And my what I say to those people are, you don't see what he does when they're in practice, because they don't allow him to kind of expand his game, because that's not what this team needs. This team needs whatever version of Steph Castle that coach is allowing him to do. He's playing that because as his parents have said, he's a well-coached kid. He's got a great head on his shoulders. He's never going to say, well, I only got 4 shots today. It doesn't matter to him. He's on a winning team. He's contributing. He's being asked to play this role. And I think that's something that we didn't really kind of take into account earlier in the year, because we didn't know what type of team this was going to be. We knew they were going to be good. We just didn't know they're going to be this good.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% about Castle. I think he's a, I don't know him personally, obviously, but he seems like a great kid. And from what we've heard about his parents and stuff like that. And I guess this comes down to, well, of course, you got to have the right kids, but Hurley, they're a team. They're together. They don't care who scores. And he's epitomized that by how unselfish is he? He could, you get a guy like that who's worried about, oh my God, am I doing enough to get noticed in the NBA, and what's going to happen? Sure. And you start getting a little selfish that you want to have better statistics. So you don't see that with him. He's all about the team, and that's really nice to see.
Okay, let's bring it back to my inception as a UConn fan, the 89-90 dream season. Who is your favorite player on that team?
Well, I think that, if I'm correct, because you're talking a long time ago.
I know.
I think that I would think that Hennefield, yeah, was because I never saw, and nobody does this today. Most teams don't press. Sometimes they do a man-to-man press more, just to make it harder to get the ball down the court. But you don't see a lot of zone presses where you get the ball at half court and they double. I couldn't believe how many times UConn stole the ball that year, and he seemed to be, and he also with Duran. It was also with him. They did that press. I couldn't believe how many times they stole the ball. So I have to say Hennefield, because I think he had such incredible instincts on that zone press. Yeah,
you skipped seasons on me there. Duran Sheffer was 96, but that's okay, because he was one of my favorite players growing
up.
That's
my memory.
And also, but that's the association is they were both from Israel, and they had that connection playing on Maccabi Tel Aviv, I believe, right? And so I think that's not an issue. Like, so it's all UConn related.
I wish I could remember everything, but you're talking like quite a few years ago.
It's a long time ago.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite Husky of all time?
Oh, that's a tough one. Well, I've always been partial to the centers.
Okay.
I mean, because I love Cline, and I think UConn over the years has had some great centers, and they always seem to lead the nation. I don't know about this year in shots blocked. They always had somebody there, so you could play that tight defense, and you had somebody as a backstop. And even though he didn't excel in the pros that much, I think that's because of injuries. I think Emeka Okafor was probably one of my favorite Huskies. I thought he reminded me, I guess because I'm reverting back to Bill Russell and Bill Walton, he was one of the most amazing shot blockers I've ever seen in my life. And he was 6'9". So he had incredible skills, incredible timing. And so I'd have to say he was my favorite.
I think you're shortchanging him there. I think he was maybe a little taller, but that's okay. I like. No, listen, that's. I think maybe 6'10", maybe, I don't know. He was slight though. He wasn't like a big guy. He was just, he just had incredible instincts. Blocked with his left hand. Yeah, that was a great team. They had Josh Boone blocking shots, Charlie Villanueva blocking shots. But you're right. They had a stretch there where they led the country in block shots there.
Yeah.
Last question, and again, this is a long time ago. Do you remember? Do you remember when you took me to the Big East tournament in 1994? We saw history that day. Do you remember which all-time great Husky had a career high in points?
Yeah, it was Daniel Marshall.
Very good. You look at you. Your brain is firing on all cylinders today.
Yeah, I remember that one. That was fun.
Yeah. That was an incredible experience. I was 13 years old.
Yeah.
He scored 42 points. And
didn't we get you an autograph from somebody?
God, I don't remember that.
Over a hat, on a hat. And I can't remember his name, sorry, but he was one of the players for the team. He was just a big, strong guy, and I can't remember who it was.
Was it Eric Hayward?
No, it wasn't Eric Hayward. Maybe. I don't remember. But we did have a lot of fun doing that. So,
well, listen, I'm gonna send us out here. But I appreciate you jumping on today, Dad. Real quick before we go, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find our Locked On Sports Today now and available on free Fire TV channels. Well, this has been another episode of Locked On UConn. For my father, Bill Zanetto, and myself, I'm your host, Mark Zanetto, saying another episode in the books. I'm wishing all of you peace, love, and as always, go Huskies.